time would be. Time now is 10:33, so it is 4:33 in Jamaica, and in the UK it is 10:34 at this time. Just finished off a recent program which I did, but I said I wanted to do something tonight because guess what? It is Independence Day, August the 6th, 2020, 58 years of independence for Jamaica. And when I was putting out my notice and I put up a couple post, a person said, Silver, you know, we're not independent. And I said, well, you know, I've been hearing that for 58 years. Not that I'm 58. We've been hearing that for a while. And I said, I tell you what, let us just do a discussion later as to what are your thoughts about independence. So what I've done also, I'm inviting persons as well tonight, if they can actually come on to the show. And also there's a link which I have, and that link will somewhat get you to come in. If you want to come on, you just let me know. And but for the purpose of tonight, we're going to go for about maybe 30, 40 minutes or so. But I've got Mr. Kevin Brown. Kevin Brown tonight. Kevin Brown is, and I'm trying to find, I want to make sure I get this right because Kevin Brown is a very key guy. And Kevin, where is it? Where is your details here? I've got your details here, Kevin. I want to get this right. Dr. Kevin Brown is the chair of the Jamaican Diaspora UK, JDUK, UK North Representative, Global Jamaica Diaspora Council, GJDC. And Kevin and I will be having this discussion about independence. Kevin, good evening. How are you, sir?
Hi, good evening, Silver, and I'm fine, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm cool. I'm good. I can't complain. I wish I was like in Jamaica at this time, celebrating.
Absolutely.
Having a ball and saying, "Oh, the Queen has saved us" and everything like that. You know?
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go that far, you know. But
of course, being facetious at the same time, you know.
Yes.
But listen, Independence Day, sure. Jamaica, 1962. The nation gained independence from the United Kingdom. Are we independent?
Well, to a degree, we are independent, but I wouldn't say we are fully independent, Silburn. 1962, we got some level of political independence, and I guess perhaps the most important part of that milestone was that, you know, British law was no longer applicable in Jamaica. Jamaicans made their own law, but at the same time, we had a constitution that still kept the British Queen as head of state of Jamaica. And I think the irony is not lost on that particular situation because although our Queen resides in Britain, Jamaicans cannot freely travel to visit their Queen or the land of their Queen. You know, we all have to apply for a visa, which is a very expensive undertaking. And of course, you're not guaranteed of succeeding in that endeavor. So I think that is quite an ironic situation to still be entertaining 58 years later. The other troublesome matter is that our final court of appeal is in the Privy Council in London. And, you know, we've still not adopted the Caribbean Court of Justice. So, you know, I think, you know, there are some problems there in terms of how you define independence. We still have a colonial style governor general. You know, land is still referred to as crown land in Jamaica. You know, so you can see that there are in colonial, shall I say, colonial hangovers that Jamaica has not eclipsed yet. So I would say that 1962 was the beginning of the independence journey, but certainly not the end, and we have a lot more to do. There are two incidents, Silburn, that solidify my argument. One is the recent incident with the Governor General's badge. The Governor General of Jamaica wears a badge that was given to him by the Queen of England, Queen of Britain. And on that badge, we have a sort of image of a white angel standing on the neck of a black A black devil, right? And
Yeah.
what is most unfortunate is that it took public outcry after the horrific murder of George Floyd for the
Mm.
Governor General to suddenly realize that he was wearing a badge that had an imagery that could be, could be racist in nature. Um, so he's now suspended wearing the badge.
Mm.
But the fact of the matter is that he was wearing the badge for a number of years before there was public outcry. So you have to try and sort of unpick the timing of that discovery, since the badge was always there. So that's one incident that shows that we still have some colonial hangovers to get over. The other one is, to me, is more troublesome, is the issue of this young student, this child,
Yeah.
um, who is being denied access to primary education because of their dreadlocked hairstyle. Now, in 2020, I really thought, I grew up in Jamaica, and I know Jamaica has a level of discrimination towards Rastafarians and
Yeah.
dreadlock hairstyle. But I thought we had gotten over that, Silver, and I'll be honest with you,
Mm.
because we have two politicians in both the lower house, the House of Parliament, and the upper house in the Senate, who have the dreadlock hairstyle.
Yes.
Right? We have Senator Damon Crawford, and we have State Minister
Terry Long.
Terry Long, right?
Yeah.
And I'm saying, well, if you can have dreadlocks in the House of Parliament and in the Senate, surely, you can have dreadlock hairstyle anywhere in Jamaica. And why would you deny a child an opportunity to learn because of their hairstyle?
Yes.
And the dreadlocks is a quintessential hairstyle for anybody who's of African heritage, right? Irrespective
That's
of,
key, isn't it?
well, irrespective of religion. But even more potent if it is linked to religion, right? But what I don't want is to say that, well, you should only be allowed in any Jamaican institution because you're Rastafarian. What we should acknowledge is that locking your hair, the locking your natural hair, is a traditional hairstyle that African heritage people have been applying for centuries, if not,
Yes.
and so Jamaica needs to now get to the stage where we accept our African heritage. So the fact that this case, the case of a school wanting to exclude a child who had a dreadlocks hairstyle, shows that Jamaica really has a long way to go in terms of independence. Because remember, now, for me, independence and emancipation, right,
Yes.
is not about just relieving ourselves of physical chains,
Mm.
right? Independence to me is the whole is a sort of the whole process in terms of seeking freedom.
Yeah, but at the same time, in regards to the little girl, even though it has been flagged up in the court, she was not prevented from school all during the course of this.
Because there's an injunction.
God, there was an injunction.
There's an injunction preventing the school from stopping her from attending.
So what you're saying is that. So what we're saying is that she would have been kicked out of already.
Absolutely.
Mm.
No. Here's the thing, Silbert.
Yes.
So what does this point to? It's point to the fact that the next frontier for Jamaica is emancipation of our minds, decolonization of our minds. A cultural decolonization, right? Where we rediscover our original selves in terms of our African identity.
Yes.
Most Jamaicans are of African heritage, right? So the fact of the matter is that is the next journey, because we got independence in 1962, but then we did not go through a process of decolonizing the population's mind. Remember, Silver, that my grandmother, and perhaps yours, saw Britain as the mother country. Now, how is that logical? If you look at the history of Jamaica, a horrific history. Jamaica's history in terms of in the 15th century, when Christopher Columbus accidentally landed in Jamaica. right, is one that starts out with almost genocidal. Because remember, no, people who look like me and you are not the original Jamaicans, right? So let's start from the beginning. We are not the original Jamaicans. The original Jamaicans were called Tainos,
Yes.
right? And most people will probably, I guess, the only country now where you can see people of that ethnic group are in Brazil, in the Amazon, right? Those are the original Jamaicans, right? And then the Spanish came after Columbus accidentally found Jamaica, and almost, well, it was, you could define it as genocide, because the Tainos didn't survive. They were made extinct through disease, through the Spanish trying to enslave them, etc. So in 1655, along came the British. They decided to turn Jamaica into a plantation, in terms of growing tobacco, sugarcane, and they imported, they took Africans from the continent of Africa to Jamaica. That's how Jamaica has a black population to this day, right? That is the beginning. Now, from there, from 1655, right, to emancipation in 1830, I think it was 1833, right? The black population were enslaved under very horrific genocidal, in a very horrific genocidal environment, worked to death, violently kept enslaved, denied basic rights, weren't allowed to read and write, weren't allowed to keep their original African names, weren't allowed to keep their original African religion, weren't allowed to keep their original African identity, right? And so you have emancipation, and you come out of emancipation as landless peasants.
Yes.
This is the history of Jamaica, and so you come out of emancipation as landless peasants, and then what happens? There is no therapy to deal with to sort it out. Exactly. You can imagine you've gone through 300, 400 years of trauma.
Yes.
Right? And you come out of that. There's no therapy, there's no treatment and that's why, if you look at the behavior of Jamaicans, I think, one would agree, that we can see the hangovers.
Yes.
So for example, Silbert, we have a bleaching epidemic in Jamaica. Why are Jamaicans bleaching their skin? Men and women. Why? Why do we have a problem with Rastafari? Rastafari that has put Jamaica on the map. Jamaica is a tiny country. Without Rastafari and reggae music, no one would care about Jamaica. And yet still we have a level of discrimination towards Rastafarians that is unbelievable. Right. And clearly, sorry, yes.
That's right. That's good. Setting the stage there. Just want to flag up also what person's saying on the side, like Lorna Foster. We are definitely not completely independent. We still have a few hurdles to get over. I've got a gentleman here named James Singleton, which is saying independence would be having the hairstyle you want. And funnily, he's a hairstylist and he's English. And
yeah, absolutely.
He even went further by saying at a school with Kensington in its name.
Well, okay, right. So
let that one land.
Well, exactly. So let's talk about that, right? So you have a country, Silver. What would be your response if I said to you that Jamaica or Jamaicans are as a people are a British invention? Because if you look at Jamaica now, as you just pointed out, the naming of places, our political system, our education system, our behavior, our mannerisms, our names. Look at my name, all my names are linked to, the Gaelic language. I link to Ireland and Scotland, and I don't know your name, Silver and Sedal. I'm sure it's linked to somewhere in Britain. It's up, So
actually, it's
go on.
Indian,
tell me about your name. It's Indian.
It's Indian. It's right. Indian. That is based on my grandfather still,
Oh, there you go, right? Yeah. And we know we had and here's the
indentured,
thing. Yes, indentured servants, Indian population, because what the British did after the Africans were emancipated, they started importing Chinese and Indian indentured laborers.
you're making some pronouncements here, and I know you cannot see, but I have to show it to you because you said I should let you see what the comments are.
Yes,
And
go on.
Miss Fragrance said, Tamara, sir, kindly include track and field. And also she went further by saying, Mr. Brown, on what basis do you state that there's prejudice against Rastafarians?
Well, the evidence is very clear because, as I just said,
You're being harassed by your child. That's all right.
Yes, you can see, right? Yes.
Yeah.
She needs to go to bed. So Zoe, please go to bed, please. Okay. So basically, I'll just answer that. I thought I'd answer that, but I'll repeat myself. First of all, let's go back into history. I encourage Tamara to go and investigate what were called the Rasta Wars in Montego Bay, which is something that the government only recently apologized for, and I think there was a compensation package, which is where the government, through the police force, right, were attacking and disturbing Rastafarians, right? No. I grew up in Jamaica, that's the first thing. So I've seen how Jamaicans behave towards Rasta, or what they call it, dirty Rasta. Even Bob Marley was denigrated. It's only because Rastafarians, through the music, right, and the prominence of reggae, why they have certain respect. But for many years, they've been prejudiced against in terms of not being allowed to go to school, right? They've been prejudiced against in terms of the workplace. You know, you couldn't for many years. You couldn't get a job in Jamaica with Rastafarian hairstyle with dreadlocks. And now today, as I am speaking, we are in the courts trying to stop a school from preventing a child with dreadlocks hairstyle from attending school, a primary school child.
And this is right? Whether the child is a Rasta or not.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. That's why I'm not even hanging up. That's another issue. But here's the thing as well, Silburn. Let's talk about Rasta. Rastafari was of course created by Jamaicans, right? And it's something that personally I think we should be proud of because they did it as a rejection of European Christianity. They did it because they wanted to create a religion that was more representative of their African identity.
Yes.
Right? Now, how many Christian denominations do you know where people have invented? Right? There are many. So why do we have a problem with Rastafari? You know, in Western countries, people are inventing religions all the time. Right? They're inventing Christian denominations all the time. How many Christian denominations do you know, Silburn? Thousands.
Kevin,
right?
Kevin, let's back up slightly here, and let me just hear what on Instagram saying. We got partial political. Okay, let's bring it around into the whole independence bit, and bring it back to the frame as to what people think independence is, and what their thoughts are about it. I understand that we're moving into the whole Rasta bit there as a
yes,
as a part of the process, which is not. And Tamara just brought back into the frame say. So you claim for prejudice is premised on history. I thought the conversation is based on Jamaica at 58. Well, while it is, Kevin, I
don't think Tamara is listening to me because I just said there's a child right now who is being prejudiced against because of their hairstyle. Right now, as we speak, it's in the high courts.
Yes, and Daniel Boza, and I'm trying to see if I can even get him on for 5 minutes or so. What he said is, in dash dependence.
well, yeah, absolutely. We've always been dependent from and so we've always been borrowing money from because of that lack of independence. You know, first of all, we've been, you know, in the 70s when we had the oil crisis, we had to start borrowing from the IMF, and subsequently Jamaica became one of the most indebted countries in the world until recently, right?
Yeah.
Our debt to GDP ratio was beyond belief, and we were in recession for a very long time. So economically, Jamaica has struggled for decades. So on the economic front, you know, that's another story in itself, because when we started taking IMF loans, you had structural adjustment policy. People, I don't know, hopefully people can remember it, structural adjustment policy, where you were essentially forced to open your markets, right? Jamaica, a small little tiny country, forced to operate as a free market economy. Imagine that, right? And of course, what happened? Cheaper products were imported, and it killed off indigenous industries. The dairy industry suffered in particular. Agriculture has never really recovered. People started importing onions from Florida. Why? But those were the rules that were imposed as part of the IMF agreement, right? Some people would call it dumping, where Western farmers, who are subsidized, by the way, were able to dump excess produce into so-called underdeveloped countries like Jamaica, right? So we have to look at the history of these things.
All right. Let me look at this. What Fitzgerald said. What I like to discover: why was Bustamante knighted Sir Alexander Bustamante and not Norman Manley? I believe this is where the fundamental issue with independence. It seems to me, Kevin, that since 1962,
yes,
the night after or the morning after, this discussion started as to how independent. And 58 years later, as I said to someone earlier today, I said 58 years later, we're going to be still saying how independent we are. I can see some comments here.
But if we're still saying that, Silburn, then it's a failure of leadership. It's a failure of leadership in Jamaica. I'll give you an example.
Yes, sir.
Both political parties have pledged in the past to remove the Queen and to make Jamaica a republic, right? So it's a cross-party thing, and none of them have achieved it to date, right? The PNP administration, when they were in power, they tried to remove the Privy Council in London as our final court of appeal and to introduce the Caribbean Court of Justice. The Jamaica Labour Party, who are in power now, refused at the time. So some of these issues around independence, Silburn, if you and I mean, we might not be around in 58 years' time, but if our children are still debating the independence of Jamaica in terms of completing some certain fundamental elements of it, then it is a failure of leadership. Right? Because we should have been a republic long time. Trinidad and Tobago is a republic. So I am not asking for anything that is unique to Jamaica. There are many countries on the continent of Africa who came out of colonization, right, with the same Westminster system, and they quickly rejected it and became republics. Why is Jamaica not a republic 58 years later?
All right. Set the stage, Kevin. Set the stage. Set the stage for me. If Mr. Brown, state the criteria for independence. What are the factors that you would say that demonstrate independence, Dr. Brown?
Well, I think some of the key elements of independence for me would be full sovereignty. No, we don't have full sovereignty. The Queen, another country's Queen, is our head of state. I think most people agree that's not full sovereignty. Could never be. So we need full sovereignty over our country. That's the first thing. We also need to change the language being used in Parliament. This whole thing of crown land and all of these colonial vestitudes. We need to look at Jamaican law and make sure that we start to decolonize Jamaican law, remove some of the old colonial laws that are still there, right? We then need to drill down into how do we decolonize the minds of Jamaicans, because that's the next step in terms of independence, is that you have a situation whereby even if we fix the political landscape, become a republic, etc., how do you then fix the minds of Jamaicans in terms of getting them, one, to embrace their African heritage and identity, right, and to be proud of who they are in their own skin, right, and not having to look to bleaching not having to look to chemicals to straighten their hair, but embrace their natural hair as it grows out of their scalp. How do you get to a stage where Jamaicans start to love each other? Because there is a lot of impatience with each other in Jamaica. Why is that? And we also need to get. Yes, Silver.
No, keep talking, Kevin.
Yes. So I was saying that we need to get to the stage now where we are embracing who we are. If you want to know what independence is, then look to our next door neighbor in America. Right? We have an example right close by our shores in America. America, no one will deny, operates as a fully independent country. You can't tell America what to do. Right? You can't tell Britain what to do.
Okay.
So we need to get to the stage where we also have a level of autonomy over our affairs right across the board, politically, economically, socially. Of course, that comes with challenges, right?
But most countries now have a level of interdependence, isn't it? Whereby as you rightly say, America and maybe like China, everybody, but there's a level of interdependence at the same time. Can there be total independence? Or is it a process whereby we start to break away the shackles of the UK, whereby we're not excited about MBE, OBE, and all of those things, whereby we remove the Queen as the head of the state, we become a republic, and then that process is starting?
We have, yes, exactly. So it has to be done in phases, Silver, and I agree with you.
Yes.
It has to be done in phases, absolutely. So as you can see from what I've said, phase one for me is the political transformation. No disrespect to the Queen, but I think it's time now for Jamaica to become a republic. And by the way, the British Queen has never objected to that idea because, as I've said to you, the present Prime Minister promised to remove the Queen. Portia Simpson Miller, when she was Prime Minister, promised to remove the Queen.
They sent Harry to make everybody feel nice.
Yes. So I think the idea of removing the Queen is no longer controversial in my opinion, right? And as I said, Trinidad and Tobago has long ago removed the Queen and is a proud republic. So Jamaicans are so proud. Well, if we are proud, we need to be proud in our sovereignty and become a republic. And as I said, we need to decolonize our laws and so on. But for me, Silburn, we also need to look at education. Currently, the Prime Minister launched a commission to review education in Jamaica.
Yes.
But what I would like to say on that matter is we cannot just review education in terms of looking at better ways to teach maths and English, or trying to introduce programming or code in our sort of developing young Jamaicans in terms of the digital economy. That's all important. But education to me is more fundamental than maths and English. Education for me is creating citizens, right? And if you're going to create citizens, then you've got to make sure, especially in the context of Jamaica, that you're teaching them a history that allows them to feel proud of their African culture, history, and identity.
Yeah.
Heritage, exactly. You cannot be creating citizens. You cannot have Jamaicans passing through the education system, and when they come out of school, they're bleaching their skin. It means that the education system failed in terms of making sure that child was culturally grounded, right? And we have the template, Silburn, because our first national hero, Marcus Mosiah Garvey, laid out the template for Black empowerment. It is says there. We just need to teach it in schools.
Yeah. Let's look at some of these factors that actually give the impression or are the evidence that we're not independent. In a sense, Kwame made a statement there. If caught by the police, Rastas will be trimmed. Still happened today. He was challenged by saying, I'm not aware of that, by someone in Jamaica. Kindly state the name and date of last occurrence.
Well, there are accusations of that. There have always been accusations of that. Even when I was living in Jamaica, that Rastas were being forcibly trimmed. I don't think anyone would dare to do that today. you know. But yes, those things used to happen. As I said, you know, the Rastas. Let me tell you something, Silver. The Rastas have suffered in Jamaica. You know, it's an illusion. It's a contradiction and an illusion the way we perceive Rastafari outside of Jamaica because of Bob Marley and reggae music. But in Jamaica, Rastafarians have gone through a lot of discrimination.
Yes.
You know, hardcore discrimination. And so, you know, Jamaica now needs to reconcile that, you know, the fact that you have Rastafarians who've put Jamaica on the map through reggae music, right? And yet still we have issues around accepting Rastafarians as first-class citizens in the country.
All right. Okay. Today is Independence Day, yeah? And while we're talking about whether we're independent or not, but it is Independence Day. And let me just read something. Today marks the day Jamaica became an independent nation. Event will see celebration taking place all over the globe. Is it happening in your bedroom, in your house? Celebration all over the globe?
Well,
people, no. Let me read it before we dissect.
Go ahead.
As people everywhere cherish the special moment when the UK, the special moment, you see, I'm picking up some words here. When the UK signed the Jamaica Independence Act, it states that while Queen Elizabeth is the head of state and the country is part of the Commonwealth, the Caribbean is self-governed. Here's everything you need to know. When did Jamaica became? 6th of August 1962, with Alexander Bustamante as the Prime Minister. Country has been a British colony since 1655. But after World War II, much of what was known as the British Empire was decolonized. However, it still took another 17 years before Jamaica was fully liberated, as gradual amendments were made to the Constitution in order for the country to be able to run itself. And since then, the two parties remain in power, JLP and PNP. You know, there's some key points which was made, which I saw in that thing about able to govern itself.
Sure.
Is that happening?
Well, I mean, you know, it's all relative. I to a degree, Jamaica is governing itself in that insofar as we have a democracy. But even the political democracy that we have in Jamaica has been problematic for decades, right? You know, probably the most violent part of our history post-independence is because of political disagreements and the political divide ideologically, you know, especially in the Manley Siaga era, where we were also caught up in the Cold War, you know. So we saw their allegations of America sort of interfering with elections in Jamaica, etc. So how you define independence is relative, because, you know, we've had interference apparently from external actors. And you know, the allegation goes that it is through this political sort of divide that you know, we had guns introduced, we had the creation of garrisons. You know, these are areas, inner city communities in particular, that are aligned to a certain political party and so on. You know, and we haven't really dismantled garrisons, for example, you know, to date. So you know, we've had, Jamaica has elections. But they've been volatile in the past, you know, and even to this day, even though they're less violent, we still have issues. And talking about violence, of course, you know, we have a murder rate that is not something that we should be proud of. It's extremely high. It's one of the highest murder rates per capita in the world. So you know, look, there's a lot to celebrate about Jamaica. But the point I'm getting at is, you know, we should also be reflective in where we've gone, where we've come from, but also where we need to go. On the more positive side, we have a very strong tourism product, right? And I welcome that, and we've done really well in terms of our culture. Jamaican culture is well known internationally. The music, reggae music, is dominant globally. And our athletes are world beaters. So there are positive elements to our post-independence experience. But you know, so I don't want to just focus on bad things.
Okay. Let me ask some questions then. And who on this live says Jamaica is independent? And if you say Jamaica is independent, why? Who on this live will say Jamaica is not independent and why? Okay. At the same time, I can see Robert May say independence was a hope for self-development. And that's what Robert May. Independence was a hope for self-development. He used the word was.
Yeah.
To say that it has lost its luster. I mean to say it was.
Well, here's the thing, Silburn. You and I are no longer living in Jamaica. So and immigration has been a big part of Jamaican.
Right now. I'm in Jamaica now, man. Jamaica is in my heart. Right
in your heart, yes. But absolutely. But the point I'm making is that immigration has been a big part of the Jamaican narrative because economically, the post-independence economy has not been able to satisfy the dreams of all Jamaicans, and so millions of Jamaicans have had to migrate to seek, in quotes, greener pastures in other countries, primarily Canada, the United Kingdom, and America. Yes. So there is that part of the post-independence narrative of Jamaicans having to leave to fulfill their dreams and aspirations in other countries.
Yes, I see that. Well, let me see what there's someone said Manchester Caribbean. I'm not sure that's correct. I would be wrong, but I think she's the Queen of England. What happened to the head of state for UK? Okay, that is something talking about the Queen of England. Now let's look at the two-party system there. This is what fits here. I'm juggling over on Instagram at the same time. Do you think the two-party system as somewhat saying that it is an extension of what was before and it is actually going around in circles?
Well, it's interesting because Bustamante in his independence speech said that independence doesn't give us the right to do whatever we want, right? So that in itself tells you a lot about his perspective of independence. The two-party system actually, that is a colonial hangover insofar as that's what was created. These two political parties, that were led by cousins. Norman Manley, the lawyer who created the People's National Party, and Bustamante, the trade unionist who created the Jamaica Labour Party. And these two political parties have been dominant since independence. And of course, it's not been without its troubles, because of course we saw where, especially when Michael Manley took us a sort of ideological sort of position in terms of social democracy, that it created a lot of upheaval in Jamaica in terms of how the middle and upper class responded to it, but also alleged interference from America in terms of subsequent elections that were held in the country. So the democracy in Jamaica, as I said earlier, has been a journey whereby, although we've consistently held elections, it's not been without violence and volatility and controversy. But nonetheless, we have democracy. I think a more broader point on democracy, though, Silburn, is that democracy is a perception. There's no true democracy. And we see, if you look at even America, which claims to be the bastion of democracy, you can see that it's not perfect there either. So democracy in itself, although some would say perhaps a better system to others, is still flawed in many ways.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, just to let you know that I don't know, the jamboree or the parties happening in Jamaica just got a message. Do I want to speak with Ken Booth? So if people want to talk to Ken Booth, I'm just watching the space here. Mark Cross, O'Neill Cross is on Instagram. He said, "Let's be clear. Jamaica is an independent nation. Let's be clear." O'Neill is a Jam American. And O'Neill, if you are online, I sent you something a while ago. If you want to
you have to clarify what is independence.
Okay, Kevin. So O'Neill, if you can come online and you can and come on the show, I sent you the link, and to say, what do you mean by Jamaica as an independent nation? I'll go further to Kwame, who is here, and Kwame is saying, obvious, Gigi is the Queen's rep, who is the head of the government, but from Jamaica had its first European foot on it. there has been some outside influence. Spanish, British, Americans, and now Chinese. So no, Jamaica has never been independent. Full
Yeah.
stop, comma, comma, dash, dash. Lisa King, who said she will have to think twice before coming onto my show, but she's showing her face and she's smiling on her live. Not independent, very concerned about the assets and natural resources that has been sold out. How much of Jamaica actually belonged to Jamaica? Now let's look at that bit there. How much of Jamaica?
Well, that's another interesting question, right?
Yes.
That's another. I mean, and this is a big challenge in Jamaica, and a lot, I mean, I have to give credit to the government. They acknowledge it because remember what I said, and that's why history. We must all become students of history. It informs the future.
Yes.
Remember what I said earlier. When we came out of slavery, so-called emancipation, we became what? Landless peasants. Landless peasants. And that's why even when I was a child and right up until the point where I became an adult and left Jamaica, people were still so-called squatters, capture land, right? Because most people didn't have access to land, didn't have the access to buying land, right? And so people had to literally, squat or capture a piece of land. Now, to the government's credit and even previous administrations, they have been trying to formalize these so-called informal communities, right? That have sprung up on government land, and so to sort of give them a level of dignity in terms of providing basic utilities such as roads, water, and electricity. And that is an ongoing project at the moment. But
Yes.
who owns Jamaica? Well, I would say that there's a lot of foreign ownership of Jamaica. If you take our only electricity company, the government, who owns the majority shares are not owned by the government, it's owned by foreigners. Our tourism product is mainly foreign owned, all these hotels that you hear about, perhaps with the exception of Sandals, because Butch Stewart is a Jamaican, lives in Jamaica. But most of the other tourism products are foreign owned. There is a lot of foreign ownership in Jamaica.
Yes.
But what we have seen over the last few years is Jamaicans now, the property market has become quite accessible, or more accessible. And so you find that Jamaicans in the diaspora have been purchasing homes, and likewise, even Jamaicans who live in Jamaica are also trying to get on the property ladder as well. So that's something that has been increasing over the years. And I guess one of the institutions that has been functioning quite well, and one that I have a lot of respect for, is the National Housing Trust, who provide very low-cost loans for Jamaicans to be able to purchase homes.
Yes. O'Neill Cross, who's in the States, so I'll come on in a few, wrapping up a meeting. Fitz Star General keeps saying Bustamante didn't found the JLP. The British founded and funded the JLP to oppose Norman Manley, Norman of independence.
Well, it's all nuance. But
now, Lorna Foster said the Chinese have got a very strong hold over Jamaica with all their investments in the country regarding the highways and main building projects. Now, the Chinese cannot take up Jamaica and go anywhere. They cannot take up the roads and go anywhere, Kevin. And Jamaica has got to be developed at the same time. By the virtue of the fact that the Chinese are there, of course, to their benefit at the same time. They wouldn't come there without a benefit to them. Nobody would come to Jamaica to build something without some benefit to them. But at the same time, they're not able to take up Jamaica and go away with it. So who wins there? Who is winning?
Okay, well, the Chinese it's an interesting development, right? Here's a country that was considered a few decades ago, as third world, second world, however you want to define it, far from being developed, and over the last decade or so have transformed themselves into one of the strongest economies in the world. And of course, they're now spreading their wings. And one of the biggest impacts we've seen is how they've gone into Africa, for example. and have been developing infrastructure there, but also not without controversy.
Yes.
Likewise, in Jamaica, they have also been participating in big infrastructural projects here, but Jamaicans have also been concerned about the growing influence of the Chinese government in Jamaica, and I think what we have, it as much as we desire sovereignty and independence. Of course, you acknowledge that you have to work with partners, but the partnership should be one that's mutually beneficial. And sometimes I think it appears that the benefits are one-sided. That Jamaica, it's the other, it's the external partners who seem to benefit more than the people of Jamaica. So, for example, when we have these infrastructural projects, it's long been lamented that unfortunately we've seen examples of the Chinese bringing in Chinese laborers rather than employing local people, local Jamaicans on these projects. That's been something that has been a concern for quite some time. And likewise, even if you look at Chinese projects on the continent of Africa, that's also a growing concern, right? And so I think what Jamaicans are desirous of is not necessarily for us to stop doing business with the Chinese, but
Yes.
to make sure that whatever we do with them, is fair and equal to both partners, and that is not a lopsided relationship with Jamaica not gaining full benefits. And so for example, we see Chinese companies participating in constructing homes. Now, I am a bit, homes in Jamaica. I'm a bit concerned by that. Recently there's a project that the government announced to build over 1,600 homes, and one of the contractors is China Harbor Engineering, which I was shocked because I'm thinking to myself, surely there must be local construction, contractors who can build homes quite competently in Jamaica. We're not talking about a big infrastructural project like a bridge or a super highway where you might say, okay, fair enough, we might need an external engineering company to come in. Why do we need an external a foreign-owned company to construct homes in Jamaica? Jamaicans are more than capable of building homes. So I think those are the examples. That's an example, that concerns me and others in terms of foreign influence, because we cannot be in a situation where the locals, Jamaicans, are losing out.
But there's one thing which I always say every time, like when you got persons from Jamaica come over Jampro, and they make all these different meetings, and they always say sometimes that the opportunity is there for Jamaicans also to invest in Jamaica.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I always talk about getting the information out to Jamaicans so they can be a partaker in the process as well. So therefore, it is there. Jamaica is there for the right picking, and people are going into Jamaica seeing something. They're seeing a gem, while others may be speaking down of Jamaica. But at the same time, it's a lucrative place. It's lucrative.
Yes, it can be. And you hit the nail on the head. The diaspora. I've been arguing, Silburn, for years that the diaspora needs to really look again at the remittances that they send home. We send home over 2.5 billion US dollars in remittances. So these are remittances coming from Jamaicans who live all over the world, but primarily from Canada, America, and the US. Billions of US dollars we send home each year, by the way, each year. And a lot of it actually is spent by family and friends on food, the basics, paying electricity bills and utility bills, and paying rent and so on. Very little of it, according to the research, is spent on business and in investments. So what I'm saying to the diaspora is that we need to now look at business opportunities in Jamaica. The government wants people to get involved in agriculture,
Yes.
right? We've seen the market open up around medicinal marijuana, right? And of course, there are many other market opportunities there, whether it is going into property development or real estate, or financial services. in the food industry, etc., etc.
Mm.
And so there's a whole raft of things that investors can get involved in. And I think it's now time for the Jamaican diaspora to claim Jamaica,
Yes.
claim it through investment. And it might mean that, I'm not saying that one person should be looking to invest. I think maybe we might need to set up investment clubs, so we can pool our money and invest in Jamaica. I think we now need to look at how we can be the investors in the country.
So therefore, then, in moving forward with Jamaica, which is in the state of independence, to be independent, if we can put it that way, it is
Sure.
whereby we take that responsibility of ourselves, aiming towards having being a republic, having the final court of appeal being the Caribbean Privy Council, or the final court, the Caribbean Court of Justice, and to really move on in a particular way. Because, as I said, some people are going on and moving on, and some are dealing with a lot of the ideological factors. Is the ideological factors somewhat maybe a stumbling block in the way? While some are say just keep it moving.
Yes, well, you've got to win the hearts and minds, haven't you? You've got to convince Jamaicans that you're taking the right path. There was a poll that was done not so long ago that still showed that some Jamaicans believe that Jamaica would be better off if it was still colonized.
Still colonized.
Right? Yeah. Now, to me, that just sounds really unfortunate, because you're asking people who never lived through slavery.
Yeah.
Right? Some of them, I'm sure, never weren't alive during the post-independence years, but yet still remarkably believe that Jamaica would be better off if it was still a colony and had gotten its independence. So you realize that winning the hearts and minds of Jamaicans is perhaps the biggest battle. Reprogramming people's thinking around colonization, around their African heritage and identity, is going to be a massive task. And as I said earlier, you have to start through the education system, and you have to infuse African pride and culture through the education system. And I would go further and say this, Silburn,
Yes.
that is not about just teaching children the history of slavery, although it's important. We now need to go back and teach African, and I use the word African because, as I said, most people in Jamaica have African heritage.
Mm.
You need to teach Jamaicans their history before Europeans. You need to teach them the history of the many African civilizations and their achievements before Europeans, so that African Jamaicans can realize that there's a history for them to be proud of. Right? So that they can stop bleaching their skins and stop straightening their hair, and realize that actually, they are also important as human beings and contributors to human civilization and development. And even when we teach slavery in schools, it must be from an empowerment perspective. We freed ourselves, Silburn, because we retaliated. We had rebellions. Remember, no, Paul Bogle and Sam Sharp are national heroes because of the rebellions that they led.
Yes.
Right? So we didn't just sit on our hands and accept slavery. We fought back. We must also teach children in Jamaica the Haitian Revolution that occurred in 1804, right next door. Right? We had the first Black Republic. Our Haitian brothers and sisters freed themselves. Right? In 1804. That's not taught in schools. How many Jamaicans know that? Yeah. How many Jamaicans know Haitian history?
And do you know the very interesting thing about that? Because when I was speaking to the persons regarding the JCDC website, they talk about some aspects of Jamaican history, which is so important that in the UK now, which is cool. You have seen I've had about 3-4 shows with some young people, and I asked them the question, how did you know about Black history? It wasn't taught in school to them. They had no idea what it was. They had to go and search for it themselves, or when you have Black History Month. And that was just a little snippets there. So I believe very much, as what you're saying there, in regards to independence, it starts completely from the mind. It's a mind where it starts from first and
It's
foremost.
the mind. You and I grew up in Jamaica, Silburn. So you and I can reflect on the education we received in Jamaica,
Yes,
right? And I can speak for myself. You
yes,
know, the level of African history that I've acquired is since I left Jamaica. Now, isn't that a shame?
yes,
That I had to leave Jamaica to learn African history, to become aware of my identity and feel empowered as a black person.
mhm,
Yet still, I was born and grew up in a black majority country.
yes,
So
yes,
just think, wrap your head around that. It means that the education system of Jamaica failed me. Not it didn't fail me in terms of teaching me maths and English. It
mm,
failed me in terms of my identity and culture,
mm,
right? And remember, now, when we talk about identity and culture, we cannot leave Africa out of the Jamaican narrative
yes,
because most of our behaviors is of African origin. Take something like Jankunu.
yes.
I don't even know if Jamaicans still practice it.
I
Jankunu.
used to afraid of Shaggy.
Right? Jankuni is a very African festival, right? Where did Carnival come from?
Yes,
These are things that evolved out of the African culture that we managed to carry over, and
yes,
of course we have Jamaicanized it, But even some patois words are of African origin, like nyam, for example,
mm,
and so on. So we are behaving like Africans, even if we don't realize it or refuse to acknowledge it. And I've been lucky enough, just going back to the whole thing of the locked here, dreadlocks. I've been fortunate enough to travel around Africa, and I've been to several countries on the continent. And dreadlocks is not unique to Jamaica because, of course, if you're in Africa, Africans wear dreadlocks as well. It's an African hairstyle. So we just need to embrace our whole self.
yeah.
And
Well,
and here's and I make one final appeal to the Jamaican reggae artists because I think it's wholly irresponsible for them to be promoting the bleaching in society. I
yes,
think that's one of the most unfortunate things that I've seen in history of Jamaica, where you have dancehall artists now bleaching themselves and glamorizing it in Jamaica. I think it's most unfortunate.
yeah. Well, I just want to pick up something, and then you can actually say what is it that you meant when you say how can we access it. I believe maybe she's referring to what Kwame spoke about regarding the stock market. She mentioned some how can we access it, and
Okay.
yeah, but use a link to watch Jamaica. Okay, Kwame is saying that African history is pivotal and invaluable to the empowerment of our people. But this is what Diane said. Diane said this, and does this resonate? Yes, but most Jamaicans do not want to be associated with Africa.
Well, there you go. Right. So, Diane, you hit the nail on the head. So the question is why?
Yeah,
Why is it that the people who are clearly of African origin? Remember, no, Nani, our only female hero. Nani is actually Nana,
yeah,
which is a Ghanaian name because Nani was Ghanaian, right? So we even our national hero indicates our African heritage, because Nana or Nani as we call her, was from Ghana, right? Kojo, you remember Kojo Silburn,
yeah, yeah,
right? That's a Ghanaian name. Kojo, again, although he's not an official national hero, is still seen as one of our heroes in terms, especially in the Maroon community. So we clearly, in terms of our connection to Africa, it's without doubt because that's where we came from, right? So the question is, why do we no longer want to be associated with Africa? And
yeah,
that's why I'm saying to you that the biggest challenge is winning our hearts and mind,
mm,
right? And you and I live in Britain, and you know how British people are with their history, right? History is a big part of British society, right? Likewise, in America, history is a big part of their culture because they use history to reinforce patriotism, right? But in the Jamaican situation, we have not used history to our advantage in terms of empowering our people and ensuring that we're producing
yeah,
citizens who are proud of their African identity.
Yes.
So our education system has been a complete failure in that regard. Even though we produce academically high achieving students, outside of academia, in terms of the identity and culture, we have failed.
And if I look at what Richard Davis is saying, Jamaicans in the diaspora can play a key role in the development only if Jamaica authorities treat them as partners instead of troublemakers. Did I cough there? In the affairs of Jamaica.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's Richard has made a good point, because my role as a representative on the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council is to ensure that the diaspora has a voice. But I would say that we're still on a journey in terms of really having a relationship, a symbiotic relationship with the Jamaican government.
Yes.
I think we're still on that journey, but nonetheless, there's a strong desire in the government and also within the diaspora to forge that relationship.
Yes.
And I think, the point Richard is making is that there are people in the diaspora with skill sets, who could contribute to Jamaica, if allowed to do so in a positive way.
If you just pause 1 second, I'm just getting a link into Jamaica. Hi, Jackie, how are you? He's having a good time there. How are you? You stay there. So Kevin,
you're not gonna.
We're saying until,
Well, at least I can see they're having fun in Jamaica. They're having lots of fun, and JCDC and promoting the culture. So that's wonderful. So as I said, look, we have a lot of challenges, but that's not to say that there's not a lot to celebrate. There's a lot to celebrate because we've come a long way. And look,
as a matter of fact, touching on that point, what are the things to celebrate?
Okay, so you've heard me talk about the politics. So let's start with the politics. Although Jamaican politics is not perfect, you can't argue that we've not had a sort of democratic process since 1962.
Yes.
We've always had our elections, even though some of them have been marred by violence. But we've never had any coups, at least not to my knowledge. We've not had any dictators. So we've had a democratic process since 1962 that has allowed people to exercise their right to vote. We have universal suffrage. And if you look at some of the accomplishments of some of our former prime ministers, whether it's Michael Manley or Edward Seaga, you've seen that Jamaica has come a long way. Then in the Manley era, we had minimum wage introduced, we had equal pay for women, we had maternity leave.
One second, I got somebody here. Yes. Who's that, Jackie? Jackie?
Right, but you're not gonna. I think the music is not gonna allow you to hear anything from Jackie.
We're not sure who that was.
Yeah. I'm still hearing the music.
Yeah. Keep talking, Kevin. Yeah, I just muted that. Yeah.
Yes. So I was just saying that, if you look at the sort of the two major political forces in Jamaica in recent times, Edward Seaga and Michael Manley, both of them have accomplishments that are worthy of recognition. I was just referring to Manley, for example, in terms of introducing minimum wage, maternity leave, equal pay for women and men, and also Edward Seaga is known as an institutional builder, right? You know, Heart Trust is one of his institutions, and many more. You know, so politically there are achievements there to be recognized. And you know, and we've seen where, although we've been a heavily indebted country for quite some time, we've now managed to sort of break the back of that over the last 7 years, and we've reduced our debt to GDP ratio to below 100. So you know, and that work is continuing. You know, I spoke about the strength of our culture globally. You know, Jamaicans are known anyway. You know, I've traveled around the world, and you know, the minute you say you're Jamaican, you know, it sort of, you know, resonates quite well. And also, you know, so our reggae music, the accomplishments of our athletes. You know, although I wish the cricket team was doing a lot better, you know, the West Indies, but you know, and don't forget that Jamaica has been to the World Cup finals.
Yes.
You know, yeah, yeah, so you know, and in terms of high achievers, well, remember now, you know, I just name check a few people. Colin Powell,
Yes.
former Secretary of State, is of Jamaican heritage.
I guess you might have to pick up and say that the potential key runner with Mr. Biden might be a Jamaican.
Oh yes, Kamala Harris is of Jamaican heritage.
All right.
You know,
All right.
You know, and Rice, yes, or Rice, yes, exactly. So you have two women who are political forces in their own right in the United States, who are of Jamaican heritage, and of course, you know, globally at all levels, you will find Jamaicans, whether as diplomats, scientists, engineers, academics, you know. So we are high achieving. This small country has produced high achievers, and we have to recognize and celebrate that. So you know, as I said, Silburn, you know, there are positives. I don't want that to be forgotten or overshadowed by the challenges. There are positives in terms of what we've achieved since 1958.
Yes.
You know, but we have to keep that journey alive, and we should never feel that we've come, you know, crossed the finish line. 1962 wasn't a finish line. We must always see 1962 as the firing gun to start that started the process, and we are on that journey.
Okay, I'm seeing what Jackie's saying. I want to speak with Papa Michigan. Papa Michigan, but I don't know if you'll hear anything. Yeah.
The music is the problem, isn't it? You need a quiet room.
Yeah. we're ready to listen to Papa Michigan. With the quiet room, if anything, Jackie. Okay, but listen. I think we have Kevin, oh, you hear the song, we can feel it.
Well, it's taking me back to my younger days in Jamaica, you know. Yes.
Well, listen. What can we say in the last wrap up moment now, if anything? I think it is a good little journey you took us on at the same time in regards to independence, and it's always been there. We always actually reach to this point all while where we talk about it, but it was always trying to get from here to there, you know. And I think that is the key thing, you know. Yeah. Sorry. Keep talking, Kevin. Yeah, we'll wrap up.
Yeah.
Jackie, get those on. Yeah.
Jackie wants to, yes, and I you know, I can see the celebrations are on, and I don't want to slow down or hamper the celebrations. So, you know, but first of all, Silburn, can I start by thanking you for having me on the show and for, you know, at least opening up your platform to this kind of discussion, because it's important that we are, you know, introspective and reflect on, in a very honest way, the accomplishments and challenges of Jamaica. And, you know, we continue to love our country, despite, you know, wanting better, right? And wanting Jamaica to reach its full potential. So my final words really would be for, you know, an appeal to our political leaders to move certain things forward. You know, make us a republic. You know,
Yes.
decolonize our laws
Mm.
and our education system.
Yeah.
And even in light of what's happened around Black Lives Matter recently, we
Yes.
should now look at some of the statues. You know, maybe it's time for Christopher Columbus statue in St. Anne's Bay to be taken down and put in a museum. Queen Victoria's statue maybe
You're
needs to
right.
be
You're right.
taken down and put in a museum. We
You're right.
need to decolonize the country completely.
You're right, because they found him. The Taínos found him. He was lost, and they found him in it.
Absolutely. Put up a statue of the Tainos. Even
That's
better, right? Yeah.
That's what Kevin, listen, I want to
Yes,
thank you.
man.
I want to thank you so much for coming on. And Saturday we're going to have this discussion with the professionals from Jamaica. That is
Well,
Sir
yeah.
Michael Hilton, QC, former president of the GLC, Matunda McCullough, who is the former deputy public defender, and Emily Shields, to talk about the whole issue regarding the judge ruling, and just to sort of, as you know me, Kevin, I like to sort of wait till the excitement blow off and try to get to the meat of it and see what's really happening here. You know, I don't want to go viral on excitement. I don't believe it.
Well, you know, we have a lot of excitement. So yes, so now we need to have there's room for both, isn't there, Silver? There's room for the excitement, but we also have to have sober conversation from time to time. And I can see Jackie's, you know, she's, you know, into the exciting part of it. So, you know, I will let you move into the excitement phase now.
All right, Kevin. We'll have a good night here, and you can even tap in still because
Yes.
we only have to deal with the Jamaica vibes now. You know, that's why I say I put on my shirt. You know what I mean? My Jamaica.
Yeah, man. And by the way, I like your outfit. You know, it's yeah. You know, I wasn't expecting it. As like, well, I feel underdressed. You know, I need to add some flair. I need to add some flair to my blazer.
You don't see my flag. You don't see my flag.
Absolutely.
The guy that said if a Jamaican was the president of America, every day there would be a war. I'm gonna stand up in front of the White House and say, "Where Russia say? Where Russia say? Say it again. Say it again, Russia."
Well, you know, Jamaicans do it. We don't you know, we don't mess about. You know, we are a serious people. So yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, interesting.
Actually, it's so funny. O'Neill Cross is actually coming in from the States, but somehow I can't get him because he's the one that said Jamaica is independent. Let's get to the program. So I need.
It's all relative. It's all relative. You know, it's independent relative to how you define independence. So you know, yes, we have a prime minister that looks like me and you, but you know, economically, socio-politically, you know, there are question marks. It's relative. You know, he has a point, but it's not the complete, you know, so the truth.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, Kevin, listen.
Yes. Go on. Go on. Yes. Let's. You know. But thanks, Silver, and enjoy the rest of your night. I will tune in on Facebook.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff, Kevin. Bless you, sir.
Okay. All thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me see if I can tap into Jamaica now. Place the live link while you have interview on the screen. Okay. Hello, how are you? Let's live while you have the interview on the screen. The live won't permit me to do that. There. The live link, it won't permit me to put the link. Yeah. 1 second. I am still live. Remember. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to do, actually, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually close this segment of the show. and then to come back. Okay, let me just say.
Things are gone for Jamaica.
Yes.
I'm
Watch
It was also in the decade of the 80s
okay.
that we lost Bob Marley.
Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to close this segment of the show and then come back on, whereby hopefully I'm able to get an interview with Buju, interview with Michigan and Smiley, Ken Booth or so. So watch your space again and see if we can do that. But I want to make sure this segment is done properly and finished with this one. Okay, Jackie, we're gonna come back. I tell Jackie that we're gonna come back. So I'm gonna stop this live now. Thank you very much and have a good night.